The Curse of Cain. Birth of the first vampire. Have you ever wondered where the ancient hatred between vampires and werewolves truly began? Was it a fight for territory? A clash for survival? No. The truth is far older, darker, and more divine than you can imagine. It began with a curse, a biblical curse, one that turned the world's first murderer into the first vampire, and set into motion an eternal war between creatures of the night and beasts of the moon. Our story begins with Cain, the firstborn son of Adam and Eve, and the first human to spill blood upon the earth. In a moment of jealousy, he struck down his brother Abel, but the punishment for this act went far beyond exile. Legend says that God's curse upon Cain was more than eternal wandering. It was thirst, an unending, insatiable thirst for blood. And thus, Cain became the first vampire, doomed to roam the earth's dark nights, never finding peace. Every vampire born thereafter carried this same curse, a reflection of Cain's original sin. With every drink of blood, they relived that first betrayal, the first forbidden pleasure. For Cain's crime wasn't only in killing his brother, but in the twisted ecstasy he felt when Abel's lifeblood spilled into the soil. That moment of pleasure became part of the curse. And so, vampires exist in a cycle of pleasure and pain, intoxicated by the taste of blood, yet tormented by guilt. They are trapped in a prison of desire, much like human addictions, unable to stop, even as it destroys them. This curse made vampires far more than just monsters. They became living symbols of humanity's deepest struggles, the temptation of power, the weight of our choices, and the eternal price of sin. Over centuries, this legend intertwined with myths from other civilizations. The Greeks told of blood-drinking spirits. The Romans spoke of cursed beings who walked at night. But unlike those tales, Cain's story tied vampires directly to the divine plan and to eternal punishment. Angels enter the war. After the great flood, when God sought to cleanse the world of its sins, the bloodline of Cain still survived. The angels saw the danger. The spread of this curse threatened the balance of creation. They could not destroy the vampires entirely, for Cain's curse was bound to the foundations of humanity. But they could limit them, weaken their power, and ensure they could never fully dominate the world. This began an invisible war, not fought with swords but with spiritual forces. Vampires felt this unseen pressure, an invisible chain around their existence. And while some angels acted as relentless hunters, others, moved by compassion, tried to redeem certain vampires. But the curse of bloodlust proved too strong. The world needed an earthly weapon to stand against them. And that weapon would be born from a new curse, one that would create their eternal enemies, the werewolves. Cain, the first werewolf and the hunt for Cain's bloodline. Cain, son of Noah, lived under the shadow of shame. He had disappointed his father and carried the weight of that failure deep in his heart. One night, as grief consumed him, a stranger approached. This was no ordinary man. It was an angel in disguise, sent not to comfort him, but to forge a weapon for the battles yet to come. The angel offered Cain a choice: accept a transformation that would cleanse his dishonor and give him a new purpose, or remain as he was, broken and powerless. Desperate for redemption, Cain agreed. But the gift was no blessing. It was a curse. His body twisted, bones reshaping, senses sharpening until they burned with unnatural clarity. His heart beat like the drum of a hunting beast, and his soul was bound to the cycles of the moon. Cain had become the first werewolf. Unlike vampires who fed on guilt and blood, werewolves were tied to the earth itself. They could sense the unnatural corruption of Cain's descendants from miles away. Their strength, speed, and heightened instincts made them the perfect predators, built to track, confront, and destroy vampires. This was not a random act. The werewolves were the Earth's countermeasure, protectors created to restore the balance between life and death, and Cain, as the first, carried the greatest burden. His mission was not just to hunt, but to prevent the vampires from ever claiming dominance over humanity. The price of the moon. Yet this curse carried its own chains. On nights when the full moon rose, the beast within Cain clawed to the surface. His humanity slipped away, leaving only raw instinct and rage. The first time it happened, he awoke surrounded by destruction. Not just vampire corpses, but human bodies as well. The realization was devastating. In gaining the power to protect, he had also gained the capacity to destroy indiscriminately. Over time, others were cursed as he was. The lineage of the werewolf grew, and with it, their hunting packs spread across the earth. Ancient cultures recorded their existence. The Greeks told of Lycaon, the man turned wolf by Zeus. The Celts spoke of warriors who donned the skin of beasts to gain their strength. These were echoes of the same truth. The world's guardians were also its wildest predators. A war that burns through centuries. Werewolves became the natural enemy of vampires. They hunted with precision, targeting the strongest bloodlines first, the elders closest to Cain. For centuries, they managed to hold the vampires in check. But this war was never clean. Just as vampires carried the corruption of Cain's pleasure and pain, werewolves bore their own temptation, the raw intoxication of the hunt. With each kill, some began to lose sight of their mission. They hunted not just vampires, but other supernatural beings, and eventually even humans. The protectors became predators. The corruption spread, splitting the werewolf race into two paths: the clans of the ancients, rare groups who remained loyal to Gaia, the earth goddess, and hunted only those who threatened nature's balance. The fallen packs, bloodthirsty and power-driven, attacking anything that crossed their territory, feeding the chaos they were meant to contain. The vampire hierarchy. Meanwhile, the vampires themselves were far from united. Those of Cain's direct bloodline, the elders, were nearly unstoppable, blessed with centuries of skill and dark knowledge. But each generation removed from Cain grew weaker. These younger vampires, called Nephites, could be harmed more easily, their powers diluted. They were more vulnerable to the werewolf's bite, sunlight, and even sacred relics. This imbalance shifted the war's strategy. Werewolves learned to eliminate the younger vampires first, weakening the elders' armies. Yet the elders remained the ultimate challenge, ancient beings whose destruction required more than brute strength. The struggle became a game of patience and precision. The werewolves fought to keep the vampires contained. The vampires fought to survive long enough to grow stronger. Both sides, however, were trapped, each bound by their own curse, each unable to exist without the other's shadow. The flood, the survival, and the eternal war. The skies darkened. For 40 days and nights the heavens opened and water swallowed the earth. The great flood was not simply rain, it was judgment. Mankind's corruption had spread too far, and the Creator sought to cleanse the world. Noah's Ark carried the seeds of a new beginning, but the world's darkest curses were not so easily drowned. The vampires felt the flood's fury instantly. The Nephites, weaker and bound to human prey, perished in great numbers. Their shelters collapsed, their food sources vanished beneath the waters. But the elders, Cain's direct descendants, could not be destroyed by mere disaster. Some slept deep beneath the earth, entombed in stone chambers sealed against the flood. Others clung to the highest peaks, feeding on anything still living, even turning on their own kind to survive. Cain himself, it is whispered, retreated into the shadow realms, places between the physical and spiritual worlds where the waters could not reach. The werewolves' trial. The flood was no kinder to the werewolves. Their connection to the land was both strength and weakness. As the earth drowned, so too did their power fade. Many of the fallen packs, driven by hunger, turned on each other in the chaos. But the clans of the ancients, those who still served Gaia, were guided by visions. They found refuge on hidden highlands and remote islands, waiting for the waters to recede. Yet the flood left scars. When the land re-emerged, it was a different world. Forests gone, mountains shifted, human settlements erased. The old hunting grounds were lost, and both vampires and werewolves had to adapt or vanish entirely. A new age of shadows. With humanity rebuilding from almost nothing, both species faced the same truth. Openly revealing themselves would only bring the wrath of heaven again. And so a silent pact was formed, not through peace, but through necessity. Vampires would feed in secrecy, werewolves would hunt in secrecy. The war continued, but it moved underground, hidden from human eyes. It was during this era that the vampire hierarchy solidified. The first brood, Cain and the 3 elders he personally turned, each ruling vast territories in the ancient world. The blood courts, assemblies of lesser vampires who enforced the elders' will, punishing those who risked exposure. The thralls, humans bound by blood, used as spies, servants, and sometimes sacrifices. The werewolves, too, organized themselves. The moon clans, those still bound to Gaia, who hunted with discipline and guarded ancient relics capable of harming even the elders. The Iron Fangs, a splintered and brutal faction, more beast than man, whose endless aggression often endangered the delicate balance. Why the war never ends. Some believe this eternal rivalry was part of the Creator's design. Vampires represent humanity's temptation and guilt. Werewolves represent its rage and instinct. One cannot exist without the other, each keeping the other's worst nature in check. Others claim it is purely vengeance, that the werewolves will never forgive Cain's curse, and that the vampires see the werewolves as an insult to their eternal dominion. Whatever the truth, the cycle continues. Every century brings new champions, new betrayals, and new tragedies. Sometimes a werewolf and vampire will form an uneasy alliance against a greater threat. But such pacts are short-lived. The blood between them is too poisoned. The shadow of Cain. Even now, the elders whisper that Cain still walks the earth, unseen, moving the pieces of the game he began with a single murder. They say that if Cain is ever destroyed, the curse will finally be broken, and both vampires and werewolves will fade from the world. But perhaps that is the greatest danger of all, for without the creatures of night to fear, what would humanity become? The war is eternal, the curse is unbroken, and somewhere, in the dark corners of the earth, a pair of glowing eyes still watches, waiting for the night when the hunt begins again.